That was one of my gripes about CalArts is they wanted to quantify everything. They wanted to deconstruct everything.
Well, how do you feel about conceptual stuff and where that trajectory was? Because that's interesting. I kind of went to school when that was the thing, and
When was that?
2007 I graduated. So that was like...
Yeah, it's been the thing since like...
Has it died down? Has it died down? Because I felt like when I was learning it, it was like, okay, postmodernism is the thing, and then the next thing is coming, but like, we're not going back. And now I feel like the sentiment is that art history is not linear, that, you know...
It's not linear, and there's a lot of great things that are happening in art schools who are teaching it, but the model is still... I think teaching art... I've taught art a lot, and I think teaching art is really, really, really hard if you're... I think what happens in art schools, they're very expensive, and they need
too expensive,
and they need to be relevant. So I think they become overly conceptual. They become like going into a math department or something. They
just become academic.
They become academic, and they become and.
Have you read any stuff like fighting against postmodernism? Like, have you read any of the anti-French postmodern literature that's
No,
out
I've
there?
read the French postmodern because that's what we had to read at CalArts. I read the first stuff, which I was like, a lot of it I was young, I didn't really get. I got some of it.
There's a huge movement of criticism about the jargonism. Yeah. If you had a thought, I can hold off.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So it's fashionable nonsense. It's this book. There's I forget the guy's name, but there was a hoax that this guy did, and basically he wrote this entire postmodern jargon laden essay. I've heard other people that I've talked to about this have also said that other people have done this and submitted it to one of the premier journals, and it got in. And then after it got in, he was like, this is all fucking gibberish.
It's
and so one of the things that's really interesting, the way that you phrase that they have to validate themselves. So the way that he kind of, this book that I read, this is written by a physicist, a scientist, right? Mm-hmm. And his partner. It's the Sokol hoax was so I forget his first name. And he said that he takes like Foucault and all the French postmodernists and starts like really breaking down what they're saying, because he speaks the language that they're using, because they're using the language of science in metaphor. And all of it is trite. All of it is nonsensical. It really is. Like, in fact, when I read the book, it was like, okay, I gotta read this impenetrable shit so that I can get to the part where I understand it.
Yeah, and it's hard. And some schools, I don't know if they're doing this much, but at CalArts,
they're obscuring.
They're doing it to kids who are like 19 years old, and these kids don't know what the fuck which ends up, and it's like it's very complicated stuff, and it is so esoteric. But if you read something like Artforum, if you look who's writing for Artforum, a lot of times it's academics. It's people who are art historians, and they have PhDs in sociology and all these things, and that's fine. They're academics. But if you get with a bunch of artists and talk about art, that's not how they talk at all.
Yeah.
And then feel like those people writing those should sit in with a bunch of artists and figure out how the people who are actually making the shit talk about what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because there's a kind of separation there. So when I look at Artforum, I'm like, okay, well, it's like sort of like reading a medical journal. But
it's jargon for the sake of jargon. It's
international
jargon.
art speak, they called it at one point, which was like a kind of...
I'm just talking postmodernism in general.
Okay.
So going back to what the book covers, but I mean, what you're saying applies. Postmodernism in general came about because in the space age, scientists, empirical evidence, that gave people a scholarly, academic, intellectual bent. And then the French postmodernists...
Was that the Frankfurt School that came through that was part of the first... That I thought that came out of that or something. Later French postmodernism, but anyway, I'm not an expert on this.
So then the postmodernists come in, the French postmodernists in the 70s, they come in and then they start trying to essentially the whole thing is using jargon to make things impenetrable so that only certain people can understand it. And
you think they did that intentionally?
I think that's Sokol's point. I think, and that elevates the humanities to the same level of. So postmodernism was a response to the.
You could speak like a physicist about,
and that's why they use topography and all of this shit.
Right.
It's really, really crazy when you get into understanding that. And that was my whole education. My whole art education was postmodern and all of that. I think. Wow. I think in the art world, it is one of the few places that I can abide it, where I can be like, you're not full of shit. But a lot of it is about duality. A lot of postmodernism is about having your cake and eating it too. Like, for example, people that are vehemently anti-Christian, but then they will take on the creation myths of a tribe with complete sincerity.
Yes,
right.
They become just as tribal on a different.
Yeah, exactly. So none of that is empirical. Right. None of that is scientific, and that's kind of the point. So by appropriating this language of science, they're using it to elevate these arguments, make them impenetrable and only understandable to certain people.
Well, and why and why do, like, I often wondered when I went to CalArts and stuff, why that somebody wanted to take, like, Michael Asher was one of the teachers there, and he was a very hardcore conceptual artist, and he had these long crits that would go on for hours and hours and hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever, and where you would dissect a work of art down to its molecular level. And I remember thinking, well, that's fine, but I could give you an example. If you sit down and play music on that guitar right now for me and you play something I really like, I don't need to know how the transistors work and where the guitar was made. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Because I just had the experience of that object, of that experience of that thing, which is the music. And it felt like at CalArts they were just lost in the minutia of gallery systems and the.
I almost went to CalArts.
Well, you probably would have liked it. There were a lot of cool shit things about CalArts. I mean, it was a great school, and I learned a lot there. And the teachers were...
Oh, but look at me, I'm painting now. And I'm happy.
Well, the idea of death of painting is so dumb in the first place. I mean, like, it's like the death of music. Oh, there's the death of this, the death of that. I mean, people do things. They make things. When the drum machine came on, it was going to be the end of drummers.
Yeah.
They're still drum players, you know what I mean? But anyway, I learned a lot there about sort of getting in touch with what I cared about by getting in fights with other teachers about what I cared about, right? Like, it's almost like, I remember there was a teacher, I showed him the work and she said, well, that's for just art for art's sake. And I thought about, what does that mean? At the time I was like this, but then later I thought, well, what's that mean? That is, okay, so you play me something on that guitar. It's beautiful, say. It's really special, right?
That's
and I
not
go,
gonna happen.
Okay, but say you do. And I go, well, that's music for music's sake.
Yeah.
Now, who the fuck says that, right?
Well, I mean, people would say that about, like, I think that people would say that about, like, masturbatory solos. Like, a lot of people feel like that kind of genre.
That's you could say, well, there's something self-indulgent about certain parts of things. That's different. But I thought that art for art's sake. Well, art for what sake? Art for society's sake. So that means that I need to make a certain kind of art that's relevant to certain things. Nonsense. I mean, art can be made. I mean, one of my favorite artists is Tim Hawkinson. You know Hawkinson?
A little bit.
Well, you look at Hawkinson is a mad scientist. He's a maniac, right? He would take his clippings of his nails and build perfect bird skeletons. And
I gotta clip my nails.
Right. And
I'm inspired now.
And he was make things that were, he would take blowers, leaf blowers, and plastic bags, and build objects that were as big as houses that were bagpipes that would moan and groan and things. And Hawkinson is one of the great I don't know if he's a conceptual artist. I don't know what the hell he is, but he again lives in that liminal space where you really feel like you're in the presence of some kind of magic.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about art. And I think that there's a kind of I think at art school you have to figure out, when you're teaching art, you have to figure out where each kid's at. And there's some kids who are makers. They get paint all over their legs. They're like Dina, you know, they make things, they get paint on them. They're sort of like kids in a way. And then there's other people who are really in their heads, and they're going to make different kinds of art. But I don't think that art schools, at least when I was there, validated that other kind of making where you're kind of lost in the system. And I actually, years and years ago, was at a party, and I was talking to Charles Gaines, which is interesting because I know him a little bit, and I think he's...
Is he still teaching at CalArts?
No, I don't think he is. He's sort of an art star. He's a really, really smart guy. Really smarter than me. But we were talking about this thing about the primary experience, and his way of making art, I think, is very systematic. I mean, he literally has systems.
Yeah.
Like there's numbers, he builds trees and everything. And I was saying my way of making art is like, you know, it's like riding by the seat of my pants. Like if I'm surfing and I get a wave too big, I'm like kind of holding on for dear life. And I love that feeling. And it was so opposite. But we're both making art, right? He's making one kind of art, I'm making art. And that's the beauty. And I think that for me, I love to see artists in that seat of their pants place. Where you can see that they're just like,
trying to learn something.
I'm in unknown territory, and I encourage artists when I'm teaching to do things that are uncomfortable and maybe do things that are shitty, like make something just horrible.
Yeah.
And it's okay, and then throw it away.